Okay, ang check-in time, programa natin sa gabing ito, 41 minutos, pasado po alas 7. Okay, araw po, gabi po, hindi araw, no? Okay, gabi po ng Huwebes, 4 po ng Enero 2023. Okay, ang programa natin, no? Okay, papasok tayo sa Consolidated News natin. Okay, babati tayo mga kababayan, no? Magandang gabi sa inyo. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Okay, kumusta kayo mga kababayan? Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh sa mga minority. Okay, dito po sa 98 barangays po sa Zamboanga City, no? Okay. 98 barangay po dito sa barangay sa Zamboanga City, no? Okay, so ganoon din. Okay, dito pa rin tayo sa pag-monitor po ng problema po ng iyang bansang Israel at saka itong Palestine, mga kababayan, no? Okay, papasok ang mga programa, halo-halo special, opinion, balita at iba pa. Kasama po serbisyo publiko tinig ng mamamayan at saka sumbungan ng mamamayan, no? Okay, sa latest po ay hindi ko lang alam nito kung file kasi bigla nang pop-up sa akin lang mga kababayan, no? Okay, galing po sa Independent News. Okay, pakinggan natin po ang wala kang marinig na narration, no? Okay, puro putok mga kababayan, no? Okay. Tingnan ko rito. Okay, mga tao, biktima po sa mga loob ng kotse, yung mga sasakyan basag. Okay, 1,000 daw ang pinakawalan po ng Hamas militant po ng rocket launcher, mga kababayan, no? So, pag nakita nyo umusok po ang itong sa loob po ng Gaza Strip, okay, sa siyudad ng Gaza Strip, ganun din, umusok din dito po sa loob ng bansang Israel, mga kababayan, no? Okay, sa loob ng Israel. Pakinggan natin itong balita. Okay, okay, Behobot, Israel, mga kababayan, no? Ano, Behobot? Ayan. Behobot, Israel, mga kababayan. 1,000 of rocket fired. Okay, as Hamas. Okay. So, pakita natin. As Hamas militant target Israel, no? Wala kayong narration marinig. Tunog lang. Grabe. Durog mga sasakyan, no? O parang may taong patay doon sa loob po, mga kababayan. Sunog. Okay, sunog po sa loob ng okay, ang mga firemen. Okay, napula po itong sunog, mga kababayan, no? Ayan. Kung nakita niyo sunog doon sa Gaza, mga tinamaan ng bomba, ganun din. Ayan. Okay, magdilim ang kapaligiran po sa loob ng Israel, mga kababayan, no? Okay. Puro usok ang makita mo sa loob ng Israel. Puro bomba yung na tumutunog yun, no? Bomba. Galing po sa rocket launcher po ng Hamas. Ayon po rito sa video footage ito, no? Okay, Rehoboth, Israel. Ang lugar po ng Rehoboth, Israel. O kung sino kayo makapunta ng Israel, eh, alam nyo itong lugar ito. Rehoboth, Israel, no? Uh. Ang kawawa ang sasakyan tinamaan ng bomba, no? Patay yung nasa loob po, mga kababayan. Grabe po ang digmaan nito. Palagay ko for the first time ganito, mga kababayan, no? Ayan. Kaya mo ba tanggapin ng 1,000 of rocket papasok sa bansa mo kahit meron kang drone, dome, iron dome, hindi kaya, mga suki, no? Sabay-sabay papasok sa loob ng syudad. Ayan. Hindi po kaya ng iron dome. Hindi po ma-deny natin ang mga footage ito pinapalabas ito ng independent na tagapagbalita. Okay, grabe. Grabe po ang digmaan nito, mga suki, no? Okay. Kung itong latest, itong balita ito, okay, binigay po ng mga independent tagapagbalita, grabe po ang nangyari ito, no? Okay, 1,000 of rocket launcher, okay, pinapasok po kinatapon po sa loob ng Israel, mga kababayan, no? Ayan. So, maghanap tayo ng kasunod na balita pa rin o itong digmaan pa rin. Ayan. Okay, sandali lang. Okay, mag-relax tayo. Okay, sunod na balita natin itong independent news din. Okay, tungkol po sa two-state solution mga kababayan, no? Okay, pakinggan natin. Ayan, two-state solution. Okay, sige po. Sandali lang. Mag-report ka, Tata?
Opo.
Okay. Ikaw una muna. Okay, si Tarhata Abdul Karim mag-report mga kababayan. Sandali lang. Ulihin natin yun, kaya mahaba-haba yun, no? Okay, go ahead. Sige na.
Hello?
Go ahead. Okay. Sige, mag-report ka na. Sa yung AR.
Maraming salamat sila. Nakinulitin mo ako na sa kanila sa iba't ang kabituloy at mga dito sa hindi so dito sa ibang mamamayan. At sa ating ulat, ng taas ko kanila ng isang kaya mong lahat magpaparaan sa dito ng kulo sa barangay na o pag-adong city ang bawasok sa buti ng mga bundoy sa kuwang maraming kasama ang nagpulbahan nito ang Miyerkules ng hapon Merkules 2:24. May iwasan kumanong pagkakas ang naturang malakas sa kasyan mula sa kabilang direksyon ng highway lahat dito ang kaya bongo at masulang sa pinagpabanin. Wala namang nauulat ang nasasal o nasawin na nagturang aksidente. Nakatala sa paragdagat ingat, malaking namibot ng ulo ng kapitbahay na na. Kaya hanap na sa kaso ang wala ng libot ng ulo ng kapitbahay na bahay dahil sa hindi kakaunawan hindi sa mga basura at pagsusulit ng tanin sa dili ng sanggahan sa barangay sa Nayugan sa Baligar City ng Nasay Barangay Dos mil 24 sa paano ditong Nayugan sa Baligar City ang pagmusin dito sa City umamin kumalo sa mga investigador sa Pilipinas probinsya ang agad na naalis sa sumari ko son kung ay pag-oso ang news sa ginawang pagpatay at magsubot ng ulo sa kaisipay angin na sa nila agi sa loob mismo ng tindahan nito. Naganapang training matapos at tinawag sa umagina sa inulo nila abing si Porto na tapos nito sa bilis ang daan dahil ilang mga kapitbahay na ang natinis ng ito habang sa daan. Kapatay ni 420 ads, gamit ang sa inibutan pa ng ulo. Ito ang isinara sa salita ng Sendo at Bilgutin. Inisip pa nito ang ulo ng biktima habang tapos sa ganda ng inuman ng mga magkakaibigan at sipat pa naman parang ipapakita ito sa kanyang magkaibigan ng mga kaibigan ang isang isip na ulo. Agad na rin na ang 24 ng mga pagkakasinong
Pugot na ulo.
ang barangay Tano na nag-disponde sa insidente. At sa ngayon, nangarap na pagkatulang kaso si Thornton. Samantala sa karagdagang ulong naman ng isang early stages sa patay sa pamamaling ng isang 18 anos na lalaki at nakasigat ng tatlong mga minoritas sa pamamaling habang kami sa alak sa mag-set sa kabate itong linggo yung mga kaisay Ghost Mill dito sa pero yung bagong taon na noon. At si Sergeant Ali na ang pinigay ng Manila sa matatakaan natin. Isinuko sa mag-set municipal police station ang opisya ng Civil Military Operations Time isang minute lamang matapos yung insidente. Sa pahayag ni Nagpret Municipal Police Station at sa Sabata Provincial Police Office una nang may nakasabutan sa lugar sa Central na nakakita ang paggamit nito ni pagkaksikong walang plata. Umalis din at bumalikan nagdala para ng militar pistol at agad na sinapisiklan bilang taong mutak iyo mula sa Central Store na nagsabi ng pagkamatay ni Leon Ricoldo at pagsubat ng saklong iba pa mga minoritas. Kanayin ay naharap din sa mga ilang kaso sa huli. Ngayon ay masaposisya na ng Matis Municipal Police Station. So, masaya na doon sa those is o ano. Okay, sa iba pa, muling balita, may pa-oras.
Meron pa. Go ahead.
Okay, sa bakang niya, tatlong patay. Meron pa isang sa hospital dito sa Magdinang Store dahil si Jayaria Outbreak. Kaya isang tatlong pulang kabata at 2 pa ang namatay. Habang 21 naman ang hospital sa Milang Jayaria Outbreak. Isang legit na barangay sa Salangin, Magdinang Store. Ay hindi umano sa paalat nito graduate ay numero 8 si Dr. Muhammad Arif Dagin Dagin ay siguro sa Provincial Health of National Director ay National Director agar na maibigay ang mga non-pay na ng sama sa kalayan dahil sa general outbreak nangyari. So, ang sinusuko na ng inuwi, ang sabi ng mga magkabaliya ay ang puso at bomba na nasikilig puso na malaking tulog ng baliya ng puso sa ilang pamagendo sa kapalitan sa posibleng na contaminate ng lahat sa ball bacteria ang mga ito ayon sa ibang bali. So, naturang ilog din na kalibuan ng mga kapita ang kanilang mga sanigay at gamit na pag-arari, makalimutan ng sasahan, at inidasan ng Father 25 pilot matapos gamitin sa kanilang kataan para sa ang bagay. Kaya, may magkatuwang na epektibo ang naisip na ginagawa ko at ang galain ng Sisway Hapon. Unang galain, hindi na ulit ang galain outbreak sa barangay Samar sa Kalayan ng Sisway. Kung samatalang sinapit na ang mga residente ng Samar sa Kalayan sa pagkuha ng tubig lumin mula sa mga bomba sa gilid ng isang pulo matapos na nasa dalila outbreak sa mismabing lugar. So, sa ating pagmuling una, Ninulan na ang data Gambang Road. Ito ay unang nagsimula ang matapos yung masakitayan na pagawa ang groundbreaking ceremony sa data Gambang Road. Hindi na matapos sa barangay Gamba Senate President, Provincial Administrator, Comandante Anto, bilang sinatawag na General General Governor Abdullah Masakwa. Sinuturo naman ni Provincial Administrator Sehunda, Bianco, na isang napakalaking na proyekto para sa pag-unlad sa bayan ng Kabukalan ang pagkakaroon ng ganitong proyekto. Binigyan din ng opisyal ang malaking tulong ito para lalo pang nakalapag pa ng bayan ng Sehunda at mapaganda pa ang bayan ng trabaho kasama ng mga ito at iba pang sponsor services para sa mga mamamaya na Mother Kabukalan. So ang nasabing proyekto ay nagpapahalaga na 18 million or 18 million vouchers na pinunduhan mula sa 30% ng province's voucher tax allotment. Ipapatupad ng Provincial Engineer's Office of PO at itatapang natapatid sa saraan ng 120 days. O isang daan at ground face araw at natapos. Yes, Sir At.
Okay. Okay, pugot ulo ha, pugot ulo.
Yes, nakakalungan po.
Oh, pugot ulo. Okay, grabe. Okay, sa inyo, pugot ulo. Pero sa amin dito mga assassination naman. Grabe. Dito sa Zamboanga, mga assassination. Sa Basilan, mga assassination. Okay. Sa inyo, pugot ulo.
Actually, ito pugot ulo ay nangyari sa barangay Karayugan, sa Bayugan, na may Bayugan City. Hindi po dito sa Mimo. Hindi po dito sa Cotabato.
Okay. Mag-extra ka na. Okay, paalam ka na.
So, maraming salamat. Kasama Sir At.
Okay.
Hanggang sa muli. Wala na kasalinsod yung Cotabato. Kung sa rin, ang ADLSNTV nito lang. Dahil sa television po, sa kapatid ng mamamaya.
Okay, salamat Tarhata Abdul Karim, no? Okay, correspondent natin po dyan sa mga area ng Central Mindanao, Cotabato City, 2 probinsya po mga kababayan ng Maguindanao. So yan po ang pambato natin po dyan po sa area na yan. Okay, salamat. Okay. Okay, itong two-state solution tayo, no? Pagkasandali lang mag-break muna ako. Pupunta tayo to, marami lang mo suggest magkaroon po ng two-state solution, no? Ang solution ito talagang mga bansang Amerika, mga kababayan, no? Yung leader po ng Amerika. Kayang-kaya nila yan kung talagang gusto nila magkaroon po ng kapayapaan sa daigdig, no? Okay, sandali lang.
Became just a slogan. But in reality, nobody works for it. If anybody really listens.
Sila lang makasolve yan. Kasi kapwa nila ito sa Israel, mga kababayan, no? Kung magawa nila ng paraan ng two-state solution, if they can do that, okay, for two-state solution, okay, global problem, geopolitics, wala ng problema po mga kababayan, no? Pag magawa nilang nila yan, geopolitics at saka itong global violence ay mapigil po mga kababayan, no? Okay. So yan. Sandali lang po mga kababayan, no? Okay, tingnan natin po yung mga katulad ko kalbo. Okay, maghahanap po ng solution po ng ang two-state solution po bansang Israel at saka itong Palestino, mga matigas lang talaga itong si Benjamin Netanyahu, no? Talagang matigas tao. Okay, kung pumayag lang ito na magkaroon ng two-state solution, okay, payapa na po tayo mga kababayan, no? Siya lang mag-oppose. Kasi meron na sa utak niya ay okay, mahirap basahin mga suki, no? O kung ano bang objective niya, okay, sa sa Middle East. Hindi natin alam po ang kanyang sa utak niya, mga kabayan. Akala niya manalo siya sa mga sa bansang itong mga nakapaligid sa kanya. Hindi po siya manalo, mga kababayan, no? Okay. Problema siya. Kung totoo itong thousand of rocket pinapasok sa bansa niya, ay nako. Problema po, mga kababayan, no? Talagang durugin po itong bansang ito, mga kababayan. Agawin sa kanya po, mga kababayan, no? Okay. Kung hindi siya papayag po sa usapan two-state. Natakot na nga lahat. Okay, babasahin ko muna sa kung parinig itong two-state solution, no? Ang panawagan po ng Foreign Minister po ng Italia. Okay, Italian Foreign Minister, yung kanina po ito, Antonio Tajani, okay, has expressed concern over the spread, okay, of the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, okay, in the region, reiterating, okay, his call for the international community to intervene. Kaya ito ata itong mga latest ito, no? Okay, intervene and defuse the situation according to the local media on Wednesday. Sabi po ng local media, no? Ito, pakinggan natin ito, no? Okay, kung hindi pa maniwala, iwan ko na lang mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Okay, mag-release ng statement na ayaw niya ng two-state solution, no? Okay, ang gusto ng karamihan, okay, sa mga citizen po ng daigdig, ay gusto ko magkaroon ng two-state solution, no? Okay. Sige mga kababayan, no? Kaya unpredictable, okay, ang utak po ni Benjamin Netanyahu, no? Ayan. So, pakinggan natin, no? Para mupisa, two-state solution. Ayan.
As a 4-day ceasefire takes hold in Gaza, talk of a two-state solution is once again re-emerging among the international community. But given the level of violence in the past 7 weeks across the occupied territories, is now the time to pursue this path to a lasting peace? And what would it take from both sides to secure it? This is Inside Story.
Parang ito na lang medyang paniwalaan po, mga kababayan, no?
Hello there, I'm James Bays. 47 days of airstrikes on the Gaza Strip.
Parang sila lang pinaniwalaan ng tagapagbalita.
Ongoing raids and arrests by the Israeli army in the occupied West Bank, and add to that Israeli settler attacks on Palestinian communities. Is now really the best time to restart discussion surrounding the elusive two-state solution for Israel and Palestine? International calls have begun to grow louder to pursue this, but what are the red lines for both sides? And what would a return to 1967 borders look like in reality? We'll explore all these issues with our panel of guests in a moment, but first, this report from Katia Lopez-Hodoyan.
Calls to revive a two-state solution are re-emerging to address the crisis in Gaza. During a visit to the Rafah border crossing in Egypt, Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, urged the European Union, which he currently leads, to make that happen.
I think that the momentum has come for the international community, especially for the European Union and member states, to recognize the state of Palestine.
Belgium, which next year will take over the rotating EU presidency, echoes that call.
The destruction of Gaza is unacceptable. We cannot accept that a society is being destroyed the way it is being destroyed.
Repeated attempts for a two-state solution have failed for decades.
Okay. Isipin nyo lang ng itong mga Europe, no? European nation. Itong mga katulad ito ng mga Spain. Ang tao po mix dyan, mga kababayan, no? Mix. Okay, nandyan na po ang mga Muslim, nandyan na po yung mga katulad ng mga Spaniard. Okay, nariyan na. Ay, katulad sa mga European Union, mix ang tao dyan po, mga kababayan, no? Sa Germany, napakarami na po ng mga Muslim dyan po, mga kababayan, no? Okay, sa UK, napakarami na po ng mga kapwa natin dyan po sa bansa na yan. Okay. Papaano kung magkagulo yan tapos magsabay-sabay po lahat mga suki, no? Iyan po ang kinatatakutan natin, no? Kung sumabog yan na dahilan po lang, okay, dahilan pag-api po ng mga Palestino, aywan ko lang mga kababayan, no? Okay. Dami ng population po ng itong mga Muslim mga kababayan kung saan-saan, no? Ayan. Sa mga Italy. Okay. Sa France. Marami pong mga Muslim po dyan sa bansa na yan, no? Okay, so lahat alarma. Lahat po na alarma. Okay? Kung magkagulo po mga kababayan, wala nang solusyon. Okay, kaya tama itong si Foreign Minister Antonio Tahani mga kababayan, no? Okay, magpatuloy natin itong two-state solution. Okay. Pakinggan natin po.
There are several issues at play, including Israel's illegal settlements, land confiscation, and the status of occupied East Jerusalem, which would be the capital of any future Palestinian state. The changes are notable. This map outlines Israeli and Palestinian territories in 1967 after the Six-Day War. Decades later, this is the new territorial outline. Between 1967 and 2022, Israel has built about 300 illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem, violating international law. The U.S., which is Israel's strongest supporter, is also backing calls for a two-state solution. In a recent statement, President Joe Biden said 2 states for 2 peoples. It's more important now than ever. The previous U.S. administration said political pushback has continuously blocked this from happening.
Hamas is not a partner for any kind of peace or two-state solution, but the Palestinian Authority might one time again be. New leadership in Gaza might again be. So if you get to a point where that's possible.
7 weeks into the war on Gaza, calls for a two-state solution are growing louder well beyond the Middle East, with supporters insisting it's the best option to ensure security and dignity for both Israelis and Palestinians. Grazie Lopez-Oloyan for Inside Story.
Well, let's discuss all of this further by bringing in our panel of guests. In Tel Aviv, Alon Lial, a former Director General of the Israeli Foreign Ministry and a former Israeli ambassador to South Africa. He's also part of an Israeli campaign to advance recognition of a Palestinian state by other governments. In Washington, D.C., Phyllis Bennis, a fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies, an international advisor to Jewish Voice for Peace, and author of Understanding the Palestinian-Israeli Conflict, a primer. And in Ramallah, Mustafa Barghouti, Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative and a former Information Minister for the Palestinian Authority. Thank you all of you for joining us today to discuss a two-state solution. Now, this is an idea that clearly isn't new. It's been around since before the formation of the State of Israel with the UN Palestine Partition Plan, although that also, in addition to having an Arab and Jewish state, was going to have an international city for Jerusalem. Let me start by getting your basic view before we discuss this in detail. Do you think that a two-state solution is desirable and viable? Mustafa, let's start with you.
Well, it was desirable and it was viable, but Israel killed it. Netanyahu in particular came to power with one goal, to kill the possibility of two-state solution. And he managed to do so in 2 ways. First of all, he obstructed any possible negotiations. And second, he expanded settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories, specifically in Gaza, in the West Bank, to a level that makes the two-state solution impossible. In the process, they've created a one new reality, a one apartheid state reality. Pushing Palestinians to start to think that the only alternative to one apartheid state is one democratic state with equal rights. Now Netanyahu is coming with a second plan with his fascist crowd in his government like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, And their goal now is to solve the demographic problem where the number of Palestinians is equal, if not a little bit more than Jewish Israelis on the land of historic Palestine, by trying to impose ethnic cleansing. He wants to start with Gaza, evicting 2.3 million people out of Gaza, and this is the real purpose of this horrible attack on Gaza. And then he will be moving to the West Bank. This is the exact reality of today.
Okay,
If you
well,
want to
let's
speak about
get
justice solution,
Alon's.
I will give you
We'll
my
bring you back.
opinion.
We'll bring you back in a bit, Mustafa. Let's get Alon's take of this. Do you think it is viable now, two-state solution? Do you think it's desirable given the current circumstances?
I certainly think it's desirable. I am a two-stater from my early adult years. I always believe this is the best solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And with what happened over the years, on the 6th of October, I was among those believing that this dream is gone, that it's not possible anymore, and not only because of the number of settlers, but also because the Israeli government in the last decade dropped the idea, officially dropped the idea. In every coalition agreement we had until 10 years ago, the two-state solution was the goal of the coalition. About 10 years ago, it was removed. So we were very disillusioned. We really believe it's not possible anymore. And when you ask me today, I think the idea is back on the table.
Okay, okay, we'll come to you again in a minute. Phyllis, your take.
Okay, kahit boses, no? Nawala ang picture.
Well, first I would say that I think on the question of viability, that there is no land left for a Palestinian state. Whether or not we like it, I think it's just not realistic unless we're talking about removing somewhere close to 800,000 illegal Israeli settlers on that land, which I don't think is on anyone's agenda. Number two, I think that we have to be clear that the kind of state, quote, that was being talked about for the Palestinians was never really a Palestinian state. It would be an entity that lacked control of its own borders, of its own water, of its own airspace, its electrical grid, self-defense. It was not designed ever, it was never discussed as something that would truly be an equal state with the state of Israel. And third, my only point is, I'm an American, I'm a Jewish girl from California. I don't think I have any right to say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's for people who live in that land, Palestinians and Israelis, to decide. And the notion that my president or me as a taxpayer should have some right to choose, as opposed to saying what we want is equality. If it's one state, equality for all within the one state. If it's two states, equality within both states and between both states. But I think, as I said, as an analyst, I don't think it's viable any longer because there is simply no land left.
Okay, Mustafa, my day job, when I'm not here in Doha, which I am at the moment, is based at the UN in New York for Al Jazeera, and I watch the Security Council meeting that happens every single month on the Middle East and the situation regarding Israel and Palestine. And every single month, I listen to all 15 members of the Security Council talk and mention a two-state solution. It's rather like a mantra. But no one ever talks about the steps to make it happen. Do you think the talk now we're hearing, for example, from the Spanish Prime Minister and the Belgian Prime Minister, do you think it's actually changed? Or do you think they're just saying it because they have nothing else to say?
No, there is change, and the change is specifically because the heroism and the steadfastness of the Palestinian people, especially in Gaza, but all over Palestine, have defeated the Israeli Netanyahu plan to eliminate the Palestinian question and liquidate it through normalization with Arab countries as he was planning to. So the Palestinian issue is back on the table. Nobody can avoid it. Unfortunately, it has to be a situation where Israelis are hurt before the world starts to see the reality of Palestine. There were many, many better ways to look at the problem during the last 30 years, but the world turned their back to us, and especially the United States of America and Western Europe. The talk about two-state solution became a title of hypocrisy. It became a cliche that they would mention just to avoid dealing with the problem. It became just a slogan. But in reality, nobody will work for it. If anybody really meant it, they would have initiated real sanctions plans on Israel for continuing settlement activities, which all these countries, including the United States of America, admitted was a violation of international law and admitted it would kill the possibility of two-state solution. So Israel was allowed to increase the number of settlers from 121,000 to more than 750,000 today, and they became a major political power inside Israel, producing such fascists like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, becoming actually the real governors of the West Bank. Now, if the world wants, the options are three. There are no other options. Either one democratic state with equal rights, which I prefer for everybody, but it would not be a Jewish-only state. It cannot be one democratic state if Israel wants to maintain this nation-state law, which says that self-determination in Eretz Israel, meaning all of Palestine, is for Jewish people only. It has to be fully democratic and fully equal, which means equal national and civil rights. If that's not what they want, and they want two-state solution, there are two conditions. One, the complete evacuation of all settlers from the West Bank. And second, negotiations will not be about what will happen, but will be about implementing a particular end result, which everybody would agree about, which is that the end of the process is the creation of a Palestinian state, the end of Israeli occupation of all occupied territories in 1967, and that the borders are not for discussion. The borders are the borders of the 4th of June 1967, including East Jerusalem. If these two conditions are there, there can be a Palestinian state. But without these two conditions, the talk about two states becomes only one way of avoiding the problem. This is my opinion.
Alan, if I can bring you in on this, you just heard Mustafa say that up until now, the international community, the two-state solution had become just a slogan. Would you agree with that? And do you think they're serious right now?
I think there is a difference between 2014 and today. I think that until 2014, countries, and especially the most relevant ones that are interested in this conflict, including the United States and the European countries, really believed the idea is feasible. It doesn't mean that they adopted it on the governmental level or put pressure on Israel to implement it, but I remember, and I was part of it, in the last 3 months of 2014, one parliament after the other in Western Europe adopted a resolution to call upon the governments to recognize a Palestinian state. I think at this stage they really believed in it. What happened, there were several things. The first one of them was ISIS. The major terror attacks of ISIS starting in January 2015, and the big march in Paris and so on changed the mood in the Western world on Islam, and as a result of it also on the Hamas and the Palestinian issue, and there was less readiness in Europe when the focus was on ISIS to discuss a Palestinian state. Parallel to it, and I agree what was said, the Israeli government understood that the world is not putting pressure and removed the issue, and it was not a policy of Israel anymore. So the fact that in the last decade the world kind of dropped the idea, definitely did put pressure on Israel. And the Israeli government dropped the idea was the situation that prior to this war, it was not an issue.
Let me bring Phyllis in on that point, because when I sit listening to those UN Security Council meetings, I listen to the 15 members talk about a two-state solution. I listen to the Palestinian delegate talk about a two-state solution, and you never hear the words coming from an Israeli sitting in the Security Council for literally years. In fact, I tried in the last year to address Ambassador Gilad Erdan, the Israeli ambassador, on this. I said, simple question, does your government believe in a two-state solution? He walked off. I mean, Israel doesn't believe in this, does it?
Israel certainly does not believe in it, but I think this is not something new and
We'll
different.
come to you in a second, Mustafa. We'll come to you in a second, Mustafa. Phyllis, please.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that it's certainly true that the current Israeli government has been far more explicit in its rejection of a two-state solution. Earlier Israeli governments talked about it, talked around it. None of them ever acknowledged the realities that Mustafa so clearly laid out a few minutes ago. The notion that there would have to be the removal of all settlers, or the agreement of all current settlers to become Palestinian citizens with no special privileges, no special protection, no arms against their own government. They would have to be citizens like everyone else, which would make it essentially two equal citizenships in two different countries. But no one's talking about that as a model. The models always included the idea that Israel would be the dominant power. And what we're hearing now is a much more explicit call for accepting the reality of the Israeli legal system, which so many in the world now identify as an apartheid system, partly because of the laws that have been passed, explicit laws that mandate discrimination against non-Jews. The most recent one, the one that Mustafa referred to, the nation-state law, which is essentially the equivalent in the United States of a constitutional amendment, that says explicitly that the right of self-determination in the land of Israel, meaning all of the land of historic Palestine, belongs only to Jews. That's a very clear understanding of who is to have power and who will have the choice. As one Israeli leader outlined very explicitly, the choice will be either Palestinians leave, ethnic cleansing, as we're now seeing the effort to force people out, or they will agree to live under the suppression of a dominant population, that of Jews and Jewish power over Palestinians, or they will die.
Okay, let me bring Mustafa was very keen to say something. Mustafa, let me bring you in.
No, I was going to say something similar, actually. No Israeli government before, even the government of Yitzhak Rabin, agreed on a Palestinian state. All they've been talking about is some kind of self-governing authority. They differ about the size of the land that will be under this self-governing authority, about the amount of natural resources they will be in control of. But all Israeli governments, without exception, up till now, we didn't see that government that would agree with a Palestinian independent state, meaning that a state would have sovereignty, would have control over its borders, would have security control of its airspace, of its electromagnetic field, etc. And even that formula of self-governing structure that could be called a state or whatever you call it entirely, even that Netanyahu did not accept. Okay. And that's why Netanyahu made it the goal of his life not only to aggravate the public till Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by an Israeli extremist, but to kill the very idea that Palestinians would have any form of self-determination.
Okay, let me for a moment, pause for a moment. Let me read you a quote. This was when the issue of settlements, as often as it's been at the top of the agenda. It's a quote from the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. He said, let me read you, the parties must act and act now to prevent the two-state solution from slipping away forever. Unfolding and implementing this vision, two states living side by side in peace and security offers the only means by which Israel could retain its Jewish majority and democratic status. That was in 2016. It was slipping away forever. That was before the Trump administration and a massive expansion of settlements being built. What do you say, Alon, to people who say there's absolutely no way now, it's already dead, it's an apartheid state? How do you dismantle settlements that have more than 700,000 settlers living in them?
First, I was part of the Rabin government, so I know exactly who were the people, and I know exactly why Rabin was assassinated. We wanted a Palestinian state, and it cost Rabin his life, as you know. I think we're missing two words in this discussion. One, the will, and the will of the leadership. When you have a leadership that doesn't want a Palestinian state, you will not have a Palestinian state. But we are speaking on a different leadership. We are speaking after this war, there will possibly be a different Israeli leadership. Now, if the new Israeli leadership will come back to the two states idea, it can happen. Now, another important word that we missed is the swap of land. All previous discussions on the Palestinian state with Arafat, with Abu Mazen, always spoke on the swap of land, not on the removal of all settlers, and the numbers of settlers here were exaggerated. I don't know about a higher number, at least in the West Bank, than 500,000, but the swap was the key, and we agreed on the first stage with 3% swap. Then in the Olmert Abu Mazen talks, it was about 5-6%. It can be maybe more now, but with the swap, it is possible. And I think now those of us who want two states have to promote the idea of a swap, to explain the idea of a swap of land, because without a swap, I agree, it cannot work.
Okay, well, among those talking about a two-state solution in recent... in a moment, Mustafa. One of those talking about a two-state solution in recent hours has been President Biden. A two-state solution that Israelis and Palestinians can one day live side by side with equal measure of freedom and dignity. But it does, I mean, it's all very well saying a two-state solution, but it doesn't matter what you mean by a two-state solution. We look at the Trump administration. Jared Kushner came up with something that that President Abbas said looked like a Swiss cheese. If you look at the UN's definition, it says, Phyllis, a vision of two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security. That bit's the same as Biden, but on the basis of the pre-1967 lines, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states. Do you think the US support that bit of the statement?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because that implies, number one, that there would be real sovereignty for a Palestinian state. No one is talking ever, not since the Madrid conference in 1991, not since Oslo, and not today. No one in power in Western capitals, particularly in my capital, is talking about a truly sovereign Palestinian state with control of all the things that make up sovereignty. They're talking about an entity. There was an extraordinary moment on this show about 2 weeks ago. I was on discussing another aspect of the Gaza crisis, and there was someone on it. I've been trying to remember his name, and unfortunately I don't. But he's an activist in the Democratic Party in the U.S. from Jewish Democrats, a great supporter of Israel, and a supporter of a version of the two-state solution. And he said, of course, the settlements, I raised something about the settlers as a serious problem in the notion of two states. And he said, of course, the settlers would have to be removed. And Israel has shown, and this was the extraordinary thing, he said, Israel has shown now in Gaza that it could move 1 million people in a very short time. So clearly it could do that with the settlers. And unfortunately, it was the last moment of the show, and I didn't get the chance to follow up with a question to him. Are you saying that you're proposing that Israel should be bombing the 750 to 800,000 settlers across the West Bank and killing thousands of them? Because that's what it took for Israel to force people in Gaza to move from the northern part of the Gaza Strip to the southern part. What's killing them?
It's the problem with this show. We get to the end and we can't say everything. So I'd like to go to Mustafa on the US point. Mustafa, he's talking about a two-state solution. Do Palestinians think the US is an honest broker, given its strong support for Israel in this war that's now killed about 15,000 people in Gaza?
No, the United States administration is not cannot play that role because it has become a partner in the crime in what's going on in Gaza, and that doesn't make it capable of being a mediator. And what we need is something different. But in response to what was said about the swap and all other projects like Yossi Beilin project of Confederation, they're all designed to accommodate settlement building, to accommodate an illegal action of settlements. What Israelis don't realize and don't understand that what they have done in Gaza now, the act of ethnic cleansing of 1.5 million people from the north and center of Gaza brought this whole question to its roots, which is that Israel was created as a settler colonial project, ethnically cleansing 70% of the Palestinian people. The message that we get now as all Palestinians in the West Bank, in Gaza, and even inside Israel itself, is that these guys only want one solution, which is to ethnically cleanse all of us. And we will not allow that. And we will struggle for our freedom. And we will get our freedom. They don't want two states, fine, but they will not cheat us with a ploy of something that is nothing but a subservient structure for Israeli occupation.
Mustafa, thank you very much, and thanks to all our guests, Alon Liel, Chris Bennis, and Mustafa Barghouti. Al Jazeera continues to cover the war in Gaza and the region around the clock. For more analysis and context, I'd recommend going to our website, aljazeera.com, and if you have views about all of this you'd like you to express them, go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or on X, the one we used to call Twitter. You'll find us at AJ Inside Story. From me, James Bays, and the team here in Doha. Please stay safe. Bye-bye for now.
Okay. So yan po ang mga mga matatalinong tao po mag-analisa po sa problema po ng bansa ito, mga kababayan, no? Ayan. Okay, sana maintindihan niyo yun, mga suki, no? Ayan. Okay, wala na tayong oras. Gusto mo na natin magbalita? Wala na po, mga kababayan, no? Okay. So, bukas naman tayo kung Biyernes bukas, no? Ayan. Okay, ano itong wala na akong oras, no? Okay, bukas na lang. Sige. Dito na po ang mga kababayan, no? Overtime na. Okay. Okay, nakakonsume ako 1 oras, 2 minuto sa ilang segundo. Okay, 8 segundo po sa gabing ito mga kababayan, no? Okay, so ang public service ay tama na, no? Okay, dito lamang po sa Consolidated News natin. Okay, may solusyon yan mga kababayan, no? Okay, mga kaguluhan yan, mag-end po sa kapayapaan mga kababayan, no? Kahit pa gaano na katagal po ng patayan, ang uwi po niyan ay kapayapaan din mga suki, no? Okay, kung active tayo ay walang katigil-tigil. Okay, pagpuna po sa mga nangyayari po yan sa bansang yan. Okay. So dito tayo sa programa Halo-Halo Special Opinion Balita at iba pa. Kasama po Serbisyo Publiko, Tinig ng Mamamayan at Kasumbungan ng Mamamayan. Okay, gabi ng Huwebes, no? Okay, so bahala na lang kayo po magbigay ng kuro-kuro niyo, no? Okay, sa nangyayari po dito sa bansa ito, no? Kung totoo po yung ay pinalabas ng hindi yan magpalabas kung totoo na sikat po yung news nila po mga kababayan, no? Sikat na mga news yan. Okay, so hindi po yan magpalabas na hindi totoo. Okay, 1,000 of rocket launch sa bansang Israel mga kababayan, no? Okay. Okay, so wala tayong masamang tinapay kahit anong gawin natin dito sa balita, basta wala mga kababayan, no? Kasi wala naman ako interest dito po mga kababayan, no? Okay? At saka hindi ako pumapanig. At sa itong programa po hindi rin pumapanig, no? Basta kaguluhan, okay, trabaho ng kaguluhan, okay, hindi po makialam itong programa natin, no? Okay? Tayo ay mag-mediate. Kumari lang mag-mediate po ng kapayapaan, no? Okay, paalam na. Okay, this has been Abs, tamahan lamang po sa gabing ito, no? Bye-bye na. Ayan. Parang hindi kompleto. Ulitin nga natin.